Welcome in, everyone. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you're watching from today. We have a very interesting addition, if you want to call it that, to all the insane Tim Kennedy stuff that has been going on recently. And of course, as we know, it seems like there's a new story coming out every single day. It seems like there is a new piece of information that is coming out every single day as mounting allegations of stolen valor, exaggerating war stories, fabricating war stories, admitting on Instagram to unaliving women and children. We've hit a breaking point, it certainly feels like. And we have a video I'm going to play today from the Antihero Podcast, their live stream on Thursday night, that I think you guys are going to find insanely interesting. And I'm really eager to see where we go from here next. Before we get into this video, everything we're going to break down, we're going to pull up a couple things here. Before we get into it, please make sure to like and subscribe. As always, totally free, costs you guys nothing, is a huge boost in the channel. Comment with all your thoughts below. I'm responding to as many as I can. Hit the bell so you don't miss a single video. And then you'll see on the bottom ticker where you can follow me on Instagram and X. My Instagram is loaded right now with Tim Kennedy clips, just outrageous claims, outrageous stories. We're bringing this all to light. We are not going to back down. This is only what seems like the beginning of just how far this situation could go. Now, I want to start by saying, let's be clear about some things here. Nobody is questioning people or attacking people for having awards. I know Rob O'Neill threw that claim out there, directed at me. That's not what's happening here. If you're honest about your awards, nobody has an issue with it. If you're honest about your military record, nobody has an issue with it. This is about a person who is facing credible allegations from teammates and others based on things he personally said is not being true, as being fiction, as saying he unalived women and children. These are incredibly serious allegations. And I have to give all the credit in the world to the people that blew this open from the start. And that was the Antihero Podcast. There were whispers before they dropped their first podcast that Tim's stories weren't accurate. But nobody had really openly pushed that hard. Nobody had said, you know what? I'm going to go through this with a razor. I'm going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this situation. And once they dropped their first episode, and then a second episode came out with his teammates, it was off to the races from there. And now the issue is back in the news, has flared up again, and it seems like we really might only be at the tip of the iceberg, despite how much stuff has already been brought forward. Like I said, go to my Instagram account, and you will be able to see just ridiculous claims, ridiculous posts. And I have an update on Tim's little kids story that we will get into. But first, before we do that, Brent, Tyler was gone, but Brent on Thursday night had their live cast, their every Thursday night live cast. I like watching those. For the first time ever, I did a super chat with them. It was really cool. Had a blast sitting in my hot home, still no AC, but I was enjoying it. There's a lot in there. I'm going to encourage you all to go back and watch the whole thing. There was one part that really stood out to me. I'm going to throw this up on the screen here. And this is Brent kind of telling a story, teasing what might be coming. And this is directly related to Tim's time in Afghanistan. Not deployed. This is during the fall of Afghanistan. This came towards the end of the live cast. I'm going to play the clip in full. We're going to pause it a couple times, and then we'll get what Tim said. We'll get what Brent said and the whole thing. I think this clip is more than worth your time, worth watching. I think this clip really sums up the ridiculousness of the situation, of the narratives that have been put out there. But enough for me. Let's watch the Antihero Podcast from their Thursday night live stream. Brent is dressed up. It was an episode about the founding fathers. Very fun, very engaging. But let's go ahead and play this and see what's said.
See what we got.
There actually is one more thing I want to talk about, and I bet it's that last video right there.
Okay, here we go.
Not every mission went well. You know, we were bringing in some buses through Blackgate, and there was a miscommunication, and a a commander at that gate wouldn't let those buses in. And everybody thought that it was me, like that Tim Kennedy was the one that had set all of these buses up. This was absolutely our operation. But guess who are the people that were making the calls to link up? This is at the highest level of government, right? Like the most elite commanders on the planet are saying who's getting on these things and trying to communicate that down to a ground captain or a ground light colonel that's coming from like a 4-star joint level is where wires get crossed, right? And so these buses get kicked back out into the city, and all those people got tortured and killed by the Taliban. But you didn't have time. Not every mission went well. We were bringing.
All right. So that right there is the setup for what Brent is going to analyze here. That is the claim. That's an extraordinary claim. That's a pretty serious claim. 7 full busloads of people allegedly tortured and murdered because a colonel wouldn't let them in. Tim's story seems fairly cut and dry, fairly simple. He would certainly never lie about such a thing. He certainly would not omit facts from it. He certainly wouldn't twist the truth. No, Tim wouldn't do that. Uh-oh. Let's go ahead and see what Brent has to say about this extraordinary claim from Tim. Let's go ahead and watch that right now.
And some buses through Blackgate.
Let's talk about that just real quick. I've been on some phone calls of people who were a part of that. And let's shed some light on that real quick. Of course you weren't a part deeply of that, because you were there barely for 24 hours. So there's no way you could have been deeply a part of anything. You hopped on something.
Uh-oh. Starting to unravel. 24 hours. That's a big difference from what I believe Tim's previous claims have been. And I believe was also discussed in this podcast about it being days and days, possibly 10 days, an extended period of time. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's see what comes next.
That would have been a great photo op and ended up being something that blew up in your face. There was a massive security threat that you wouldn't have known about because you're not tied into anything and you were barely there. But they knew there was a massive security threat of suicide bombers. And everyone who came on that tarmac had white wristbands or indicators of some sorts that they had come through the checkpoint. When it was found out that these guys essentially smuggled 7 busloads of people and they were trying to get on planes with no wristbands, which means they did not get checked in any way, a colonel came up and had questions. Why wouldn't you have questions for the security of the base that you're in charge of? And if someone would have probably had a cooler head and talked to this colonel and said, hey, this is what's going on. This is who these people are. Let's just talk about it. Tim Kennedy basically had this, do you know who I am moment?
Let me pause it right there real quick. Does that surprise anybody? Does that surprise a single person listening? Very interesting. Let's continue.
And inserted himself and pissed off the colonel. And so the colonel basically is like, well, do you know who I am, what rank I have, and what I can do? And sent the buses back. You want to be a dick? That's what happens. And so Tim Kennedy inserted himself and effed up the whole situation. Not my words, other people's words. But here's the craziest part of this whole story. He said they got sent back out and tortured and killed. You want to know what happened to all of those people in the buses that were turned around?
Absolutely.
They were eventually put on planes and they made it back to wherever they were going just fine.
All right, let me pause it there again. Let's react to this a little bit. This is the thing with facts and documentation and eyewitness accounts and record keeping. When you say one thing, if it's easily enough fact checked, even if it comes years later, it'll blow up in your face. That's just the way the world works. And that's going to lead me to something else we're going to talk about later in this video. So Tim says 7 whole busloads of people were tortured and killed. Brent on the Antihero podcast says he talked to people and all 7 buses got on the planes after doing it the right way. Those stories are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Which is it? We got 7 busloads of people who've been taken out. Or we got 7 busloads of people that were essentially delayed because they went somewhere they weren't supposed to and then came through the proper channels and everyone survived. It's one or the other. Everyone got killed? Nobody got killed. Well, I'm not an expert, but I'm guessing that there would be some documentation of the people who was on those buses and whether or not they were put on planes. That seems pretty simple. And Brent seems very confident in his sources, and why wouldn't he be? Everything else he's floated about this disastrous web of deceit, if you want to call it that, has more or less checked out. So let's continue.
That was a lie. They didn't get tortured and killed. All of them eventually made it on the planes because they went back through the gate the right way, because they were who they were supposed to be. Got on. What an absolute, I try to be professional. What an absolute piece of shit thing to say that this colonel turned these people around and the blood of 7 busloads of people are on his hands. I mean, if that truly happened, that colonel has to go to sleep at night and deal with this, except for the fact they all made it out okay. Don't worry, I'll bring receipts. There's more where that came from. I'm telling you, I'm on a war path. There will be another episode soon, and we are going to hopefully have the same effect the first podcast has, because the first podcast really it blew up. And
Let me stop it right there. Brent is 100% right. Brent is 100% right when he says that the first one blew up. And again, that is what started the unraveling here. That is what started everything we've seen happen. The people who have anonymously reached out with information, his old ground force commander going public, his teammates going public. None of that was happening until the Antihero podcast kicked the door wide open back in November. And Brent is correct. It did blow up. And let's see, what he has to say to finish this out, and then we'll get into another update.
Everyone got on it, and everything is happening now because of our first podcast. And I'm not looking for recognition, but all those guys are great. Basically saying like, hey, like the Antihero podcast had the balls to do this, and we appreciate that. And I do. I'm very grateful for that. Nate does it all the time. I'm grateful for it. David Hookstead does it all the time. I'm grateful for it. And they took the flag, and they continued and brought me more information as well than I would have never had. So I'm grateful for that. But this is far from over. There's so much more that'll blow your mind, and just hang on for a little bit more. It's coming.
All right. We'll wrap that up there. Pop this off the screen. Well, that's about as damning as it gets. One of those 2 stories, one of those 2 versions is true and one is false. And right now, I would be very nervous if I were Tim Kennedy, because these are things that can be fact checked. These are things that can be run down. And that story that Tim told on the Sean Ryan show has been repeated over and over again by people. It's been believed to be factual. It's been believed that that is the official narrative. And now we have a different narrative out there. We have one that is actually in stark contrast. Interesting. It's funny how that works. But we're not quite done yet, because I've also been doing some digging. Let's throw this up here. So this post blew up. This post went absolutely bonkers on Instagram. Go ahead and read who's in the comments, because some of Tim Kennedy's fanboys like to come after me and say, you don't know anything. You don't know shit. you don't know anything about what happened over there. Fair enough. I was never in the military, was never in special operations. Weirdly, though, a lot of people who were seem very happy about the house of cards coming down. So this is what you're looking at on the screen right now is the statement on top when they said Army Special Operations Command doesn't endorse, nor are Tim Kenny's comments representative of the command. On below that on the screen, you see where he says, I've killed kids and women during war. I've seen my friends and fellow soldiers burn alive. I spent a lot of time running down to see if I could find any record of Tim talking about killing children. I have found one example. It was on the Sean Ryan show. I don't think I can play the clip here without YouTube possibly taking the video down. He says he shot a kid, I believe he thinks was around 11, 600 yards away, who had a rifle that did not operate. And I think he was running between two different positions. And he shot him at 600 yards. The story as he tells it, the timeline of that is during the convoy to Firebase Anaconda. That's going to be a problem for Tim. And I'm going to tell you why. I know for a fact one of the issues the Army is having behind the scenes right now is being able to locate records with no specific dates attached because he just makes broad claims. Well, I'm here to tell you all that once it was figured out where that claim originated from and a timeline could be pinpointed and pinned down, that makes finding out whether or not the records exist shockingly easy. Furthermore, because it was on this convoy where there were a lot of witnesses and people have gone public, it won't be difficult anymore to chase down eyewitnesses to this story of Tim allegedly shooting an 11-year-old who was armed with a weapon that did not work at roughly 600 yards. Not only will there be documentation on file somewhere, there will also be eyewitnesses to this event. Tim also claims 2 different JAGs signed off on him taking the rifle home. That in and of itself doesn't really mean anything. But what it will mean is that somewhere out there, there is going to be a paper trail of how the rifle was recovered, what happened, and the military will have those records. I don't think Tim realized when he put a time frame on it how quickly and how easily it would be to fact check. I have the official request in. It is being worked on. If he had not put a timeline on that, this would have taken potentially a lot longer. So we will see. We will see beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, they're throwing a bigger net. I can promise you that as well, to get any and all documents, because it would have been documented, according to everyone I've talked to at Army Special Operations Command, the big Army's press office, other sources. If these deaths of women and children were real, it's documented somewhere. And we're going to find those documents, and they're going to be released if they exist. And here's the other problem. If they don't exist, now we've got a whole new set of questions to get answered. Because how was all this killing of civilians happening, but it was never documented? The Army is confident if any such event occurred, there'll be a paper trail with specific information in it. And I promise you, they are attempting to get it. So we will see about Timmy's little story about saying, I have killed kids and women during war. We'll see if one witness can back that up. If one person from that convoy says, yes, I remember Tim shooting someone, an 11-year-old-ish child, from 600 yards away. We'll see. We'll see if the Army can dig up any documents related to that convoy, any after-action reports. I believe it's called an EXIM report as well, where it documented civilians being killed. It's going to get real interesting. It's going to get very, very, very interesting. I'm putting in a lot of work. I know other people are putting in a lot of work. I've got requests in to a shitload of people. I am very eager to see what comes next. Very excited to see what comes next. But I want to know what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments below. As I said, you can see all the Tim Kennedy videos on my Instagram, David_Hookstead. You can also follow me on X. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Cost you guys absolutely nothing. Huge in the algorithm. And then hit that bell. Make sure all notifications are on. And as always, I'll keep you updated when we have more. Have a great day.